Good morning, beloved souls who have chosen to begin this day in the presence of the Almighty. As the first rays of sunlight pierce through the darkness and the world slowly awakens around us, there is something profoundly sacred about this moment we share together. You didn't arrive here by accident. You didn't stumble upon this prayer by chance. No, something deeper called you here, something within your spirit that recognizes the desperate need we all have to turn to God first, before anything else touches our hearts or minds this morning. Let me ask you something that might stir your soul. When was the last time you woke up and your very first thought, your very first breath, your very first word was directed toward heaven? Not toward your phone, not toward your worries about the day ahead, not toward the endless list of tasks waiting for you, but toward the one who gave you this breath, this heartbeat, this new beginning. If you're honest with yourself, it's probably been too long, hasn't it? There's a reason why your heart feels heavy some mornings. There's a reason why anxiety creeps in before your feet even hit the floor. There's a reason why you feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders before the day has even truly begun. It's because we've forgotten the ancient rhythm, the sacred pattern that our souls were designed to follow. We've forgotten that God is meant to be our first refuge, our first source of strength, our first conversation of every single day. But today, that changes. Today, we're going to rediscover what it means to turn to God first, not as a religious obligation, possibly do with our morning. Because when we get natural, most necessary, most life-giving thing, we could not as some ritual we perform to check a box, but as the most this right, when we truly understand how to begin our days in God's presence, everything else shifts. The chaos doesn't disappear, but our response to it transforms. The challenges don't vanish, but our capacity to face them multiplies. The uncertainties don't evaporate, but our confidence in who holds our future becomes unshakable. I want to share something with you that might surprise you. The most successful prayers, the most powerful mornings, the most transformative beginnings don't happen because we have perfect faith or because our lives are perfectly ordered. They happen when we come to God exactly as we are, in whatever state we find ourselves, with whatever burdens we're carrying, with whatever questions are plaguing our minds. God doesn't require us to clean ourselves up before we approach Him. He invites us to come messy, come broken, come confused, come desperate. Think about this for a moment. When a child is hurt, do they wait until they've stopped crying to run to their parent? When someone is drowning, do they wait until they've learned to swim perfectly before calling for help? Of course not. The need itself is the invitation. The desperation itself is the doorway. And this morning, whatever brought you to this prayer, whatever weight you're carrying, whatever hope you're clinging to, whatever fear is gripping your heart, that very thing is your invitation to encounter the living God. Over the next few minutes, we're going to walk through what it truly means to turn to God first. Not just in theory, not just in concept, but in the practical moment-by-moment reality of surrendering our morning, our day, our very lives into His capable hands. We're going to explore why this single decision, this one choice to seek God before we seek anything else, has the power to transform not. But I need you to understand something crucial, just our mornings, but our entire existence. Another item to your morning routine. This isn't about religious performance or spiritual perfectionism. This is about coming before we continue. This isn't about adding home. This is about returning to the relationship your soul was created for. This is about finding the peace, the strength, the clarity, the hope that can only come from beginning each day in communion with the Creator of the universe. You see, when we turn to God first, we're not just starting our day with prayer. We're acknowledging a fundamental truth about reality itself. We're recognizing that we are not the authors of our own story, that we are not the ones holding everything together, that we are not responsible for controlling outcomes that are far beyond our ability to control. We're surrendering the illusion of self-sufficiency and embracing the beautiful truth of our dependence on the one who loves us more than we could ever imagine. And here's what happens when we truly grasp this truth. The pressure lifts, the anxiety loosens its grip, the overwhelming sense of responsibility for things beyond our control begins to fade. Not because our circumstances change immediately, but because our perspective shifts dramatically. We stop trying to be God in our own lives and start allowing God to be God. We stop striving and start trusting. We stop performing and start resting in His grace. But let me be clear about something. Turning to God first doesn't mean we become passive or irresponsible. It doesn't mean we stop working or planning or taking action. It means we align our efforts with His will. It means we draw our strength from His endless supply rather than our own limited resources. It means we make our decisions from a place of peace rather than panic, from wisdom rather than worry, from faith rather than fear. There's a story I want to tell you, a story that illustrates the power of what we're talking about. Picture a man who had built his entire identity around being self-reliant, around having all the answers, around being the one everyone else could depend on. For years, he started every morning the same way, immediately diving into his phone, checking emails, reviewing his schedule, mentally preparing for the battles he would face that day. He was successful by most standards, but he was also exhausted, anxious, and increasingly aware that something essential was missing from his life. One morning, everything changed, not because of some dramatic external event, but because of a simple realization. As he reached for his phone, as he prepared to dive into the familiar routine of worry and planning, something inside him whispered, "What if you talk to me first?" It wasn't an audible voice, but it was unmistakable. It was God, gently inviting him to a different way of beginning his day. That morning, for the first time in years, he set his phone aside and began to pray. Not with eloquent words or perfect theology, but with simple, honest desperation. "God, I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't know how to carry all of this. I need you." And in that moment of surrender, something shifted. The weight he had been carrying didn't disappear, but it was no longer his to bear alone. The problems didn't solve themselves, but he was no longer facing them in his own strength. This is what I mean by turning to God first. It's not about perfect prayers or spiritual sophistication. It's about honest surrender. It's about admitting our need and accepting His provision. It's about starting our day not with our own agenda, but with His presence. It's about choosing dependence over independence, trust over control, faith over fear. And here's the beautiful thing about this choice. The more we practice it, the more natural it becomes. The more we turn to God first, the more we realize how foolish it was to try to do life any other way. The more we experience His faithfulness in our mornings, the more confident we become in His goodness throughout our days. But I want to address something that might be running through your mind right now. You might be thinking, "This sounds beautiful, but my life is too chaotic for this. My mornings are too rushed. My responsibilities are too pressing. I don't have time for long prayers or extended quiet times." And I want you to know that I hear you. I understand the reality of busy lives and demanding schedules. But here's what I've discovered, and what countless others have discovered as well. We don't turn to God first because we have time. We turn to God first because we need time, because we need His perspective on how to use our time, because we need His strength to face what the day will bring. We don't pray because our lives are calm. We pray because our lives are chaotic, and we need His peace. We don't seek God because everything is going well. We seek God because we need His wisdom, His guidance, truth is, turning, His provision for whatever lies ahead. The to God first doesn't take time from our day. It redeems our time, it multiplies our effectiveness, it brings clarity to our confusion, peace to our anxiety, strength to our weakness. When we start our day in God's presence, we're not adding another burden to our schedule. We're accessing the very source of life itself. So as we prepare to enter into prayer together, I want you to release any pressure you might feel to do this perfectly. I want you to let go of any guilt about mornings when you failed to seek God first. I want you to abandon any notion that you need to have your life together before you can approach the throne of grace. God meets us where we are, not where we think we should be. Right now, in this moment, you have the opportunity to make a choice that will set the tone not just for today, but potentially for the rest of your life. You can choose to turn to God first. You can choose to begin this day and every day moving forward in His presence. You can choose to acknowledge your need for Him and accept His invitation to cast all your cares upon Him because He cares for you. This is more than just a morning prayer. This is a declaration of dependence. This is an acknowledgement of who God is and who we are in relation to Him. This is the beginning of a transformed life, a life lived not in the exhausting effort of self-reliance, but in the peaceful confidence of divine partnership. Take a deep breath with me right now. Feel the weight of whatever you've been carrying slowly beginning to lift, as we acknowledge together that we were never meant to bear these burdens alone. There's something happening in this very moment that goes beyond what our natural eyes can see. The Spirit of God is moving, drawing hearts that have been scattered by the storms of life back to the safe harbor of His presence. You know, there's a profound difference between knowing about God and actually knowing God. There's a vast chasm between understanding prayer as a concept and experiencing prayer as a living, breathing conversation with the Creator of the universe. And this morning, we're not just going to talk about turning to God first. We're going to actually do it. We're going to cross that bridge from theory to reality, from knowledge to experience, from religion to relationship. But before we step fully into this sacred space of prayer, I need you to understand something that will change how you approach every morning for the rest of your life. When we turn to God first, we're not just engaging in a spiritual exercise. We're participating in the fundamental rhythm of the universe itself. We're aligning ourselves with the way things were always meant to be. Think about this with me for a moment. Before you were born, before your parents even met, before the foundations of the world were laid, God was already thinking about this very moment. He was already preparing for this conversation. He was already anticipating your needs, your struggles, your questions, your fears. This morning prayer isn't an interruption to His day or an inconvenience to His schedule. This is what He's been waiting for. This is the relationship He created you for. And here's something that might shock you. God doesn't just want to hear from you in the morning. He's been waiting to speak to you. He's been longing to pour out His heart to you, to share His thoughts with you, to reveal His plans for your life. But so often, our days become so filled with noise, so cluttered with distractions, so overwhelmed with urgent demands that we can't hear His gentle voice. That's why the morning matters so much. That's why turning to God first is so crucial. In the quiet of the morning, before the world starts shouting its demands at us, before our minds become cluttered with 1,000 different concerns, before our emotions get hijacked by the stress and pressure of the day, there's a window of opportunity. There's a moment when heaven feels close, when God's voice is clear, when His presence is tangible. This is the moment we're stepping into right now. Now I want to share with you 3 truths that will transform how you experience these morning moments with God. These aren't just nice ideas or inspirational thoughts. These are spiritual realities that will anchor your soul and give you unshakable confidence as you learn to turn to God first. The first truth is this: God is already present. You don't have to summon Him. You don't have to convince Him to show up. You don't have to perform perfectly to earn His attention. He's here. He's been here all along. He was here when you went to sleep last night, watching over you, protecting you, preparing for this very conversation. He's here now, closer than your own heartbeat, more attentive than your most caring friend, more invested in your well-being than you are yourself. This changes everything about how we approach prayer. We're not trying to reach a distant God. We're acknowledging the present God. We're not attempting to get His attention. We're recognizing that we already have it. We're not begging Him to care about our lives. We're accepting the reality that He cares more deeply than we could ever imagine. The second truth is this: your honest heart is enough. You don't need eloquent words. You don't need perfect theology. You don't need to sound like a preacher or quote Bible verses with precision. God isn't impressed by religious language or spiritual performance. He's moved by authentic hearts. He's drawn to genuine need. He's attracted to honest surrender. Whatever you're feeling right now, whatever emotions are swirling in your heart, whatever thoughts are racing through your mind, that's exactly what God wants to hear. If you're angry, tell Him. If you're confused, share that confusion. If you're afraid, admit that fear. If you're hopeful, express that hope. If you're grateful, voice that gratitude. If you're desperate, cry out that desperation. There's no wrong way to come to God when you're coming with a sincere heart. The third truth is this: this conversation changes you. Prayer isn't just about getting things from God, though He loves to give good gifts to His children. Prayer isn't just about asking for help, though He delights to help us in our time of need. Prayer is about transformation. Every genuine encounter with God leaves us different than we were before. Every real conversation with Him shifts something deep within our spirits. When we turn to God first, we're not just starting our day with a spiritual activity. We're opening ourselves to be shaped by divine love. We're allowing His character to influence our character. We're permitting His peace to calm our anxiety, His strength to fortify our weakness, His wisdom to guide our decisions, His hope to sustain our spirits through whatever the day might bring. This is why turning to God first is so much more than just a good habit or a nice routine. This is about fundamental transformation. This is about becoming the person you were created to be. This is about discovering the life you were meant to live. And I want you to know that this transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's not a one-time event that suddenly makes everything perfect. It's a daily process, a gradual metamorphosis that happens as we consistently choose to begin our days in God's presence. Some mornings you'll feel His presence powerfully. Other mornings it might seem quiet or distant. Some days prayer will flow easily. Other days you might struggle to find words. That's all normal. That's all part of the journey. What matters is not the intensity of your feelings or the eloquence of your words. What matters is the consistency of your choice to turn to God first. What matters is the faithfulness of showing up day after day, morning after morning, bringing whatever you have, offering whatever you are, trusting that God meets us in our weakness just as readily as He meets us in our strength. You see, God isn't looking for perfect people to have relationships with. He's looking for available people. He's not seeking those who have all the answers, but those who are willing to ask the right questions. He's not calling the qualified, but qualifying the called. And this morning, by your very presence here, by your willingness to turn to Him first, you're demonstrating the only qualification that matters, a heart that recognizes its need for God. So as we prepare to pray together, as we prepare to enter into this sacred conversation, I want you to release any expectations about what should happen. I want you to let go of any pressure to feel a certain way or experience specific emotions. I want you to abandon any worry about whether you're doing this right. Just come as you are. Bring whatever burdens you're carrying. Offer whatever faith you have, no matter how small it might seem. God sees you, God knows you, God loves you, and God is ready to meet with you right now, in this moment, exactly as you are. This is your invitation to experience what it truly means to turn to God first, not just in the morning, but as a way of life. This is your opportunity to discover the peace, the strength, the hope, the joy that comes from beginning each day in communion with the one who holds your past, your present, and your future in His loving hands. The beautiful thing about this moment is that God doesn't need you to have everything figured out before you approach Him. He doesn't require a spotless heart or a perfectly ordered life. In fact, it's often in our messiest moments, our most broken seasons, our deepest valleys, that we discover the profound truth of who God really is. He's not a distant deity waiting for us to clean ourselves up. He's a loving Father who runs toward us while we're still far off, who sees us in our weakness and calls us His beloved. I want you to imagine something with me right now. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast ocean. The waves are crashing at your feet, and you're holding a heavy suitcase filled with all your worries, your fears, your mistakes, your regrets, your anxieties about the future. You've been carrying this suitcase for so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to walk without its weight. Your shoulders ache, your back is bent, your steps have become labored and slow. Now imagine that as you stand there, struggling under this burden, someone approaches you. Not just anyone, but the most trustworthy person you've ever encountered. Someone whose very presence radiates peace and strength. Someone whose eyes reflect perfect love and understanding. This person extends their hand and says, "I'll carry that for you. In fact, I've been waiting to carry it for you." This is what happens when we turn to God first each morning. We're not just saying prayers into empty space. We're meeting with the one who has been waiting to take our burdens, to carry our concerns, to shoulder our fears. We're connecting with the God who knows exactly what we need before we even ask, who has already prepared solutions for problems we haven't even encountered yet. But here's something that might challenge everything you think you know about prayer and about God Himself. When we turn to God first, we're not just bringing our problems to Him, we're also bringing our dreams, our hopes, our excitement about what might be possible. Too many people have been taught that God is only interested in our struggles, that we should only approach Him when we're desperate or in trouble. But that's not the God revealed in Scripture. That's not the God who delights in giving good gifts to His children. God wants to celebrate with you. He wants to share in your joy. He wants to be part of your victories, your breakthroughs, your moments of wonder and amazement. When something beautiful happens in your life, when you experience a moment of pure happiness, when you witness something that takes your breath away, God's heart is moved by your joy. He's not a stern taskmaster who only wants to hear about your failures. He's a loving Father who rejoices over you with singing. This changes how we approach our morning conversations with God, doesn't it? Instead of just coming with our hands out, begging for help, we can come with our hearts open, ready to share the fullness of our human experience. We can bring our gratitude for yesterday's blessings alongside our concerns for today's challenges. We can express our excitement about future possibilities while acknowledging our need for wisdom and guidance. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman who discovered this truth in the most unexpected way. Sarah had been taught that prayer was primarily about confession and petition, about admitting her sins and asking God to fix her problems. For years, her morning prayers followed the same pattern: apologize for yesterday's mistakes, list today's worries, ask for help, and hurry off to start her day. But one morning, something different happened. As she was walking to her car after her usual rushed prayer time, she noticed the most spectacular sunrise painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The beauty was so overwhelming that she actually stopped in her tracks and gasped. And in that moment, without thinking, she found herself saying, "God, thank you for creating something so beautiful. Thank you for letting me see this." It was a simple moment, a spontaneous expression of gratitude and wonder. But something shifted in Sarah's understanding of who God is and what prayer can be. She realized that God wasn't just interested in her problems and failures. He was the creator of beauty, the giver of every good gift, the one who painted sunrises and placed joy in human hearts. Her morning prayers began to change. Yes, she still brought her concerns and confessions, but she also brought her wonder, her gratitude, her excitement about life itself. This is what I mean when I say that turning to God first transforms not just our mornings, but our entire perspective on life. When we begin to see God as He truly is, not just as a problem solver, but as the source of all beauty, all joy, all hope, all love, our conversations with Him become richer, deeper, more authentic. And here's something beautiful that happens as we develop this kind of relationship with God. We begin to see His hand in the ordinary moments of our lives. We start to recognize His voice in the gentle whisper of encouragement that comes just when we need it most. We notice His provision in ways we never saw before. We become aware of His protection, His guidance, His faithfulness in countless small and large ways throughout our days. But I want to be honest with you about something. This journey of learning to turn to God first isn't always easy. There will be mornings when you wake up and immediately feel overwhelmed by everything on your schedule. There will be days when your first instinct is to grab your phone and dive into the chaos of emails and social media and news. There will be seasons when prayer feels dry or difficult, when God seems silent or distant. In those moments, I want you to remember that faithfulness isn't about perfect feelings or constant spiritual highs. Faithfulness is about showing up even when you don't feel like it. It's about choosing to turn to God even when your emotions are telling you to handle everything yourself. It's about trusting in His character even when you can't sense His presence. Think about the most important relationships in your life. Are they strong because every conversation is exciting and emotionally charged? Of course not. They're strong because of consistency, because of showing up for each other through all kinds of seasons, because of choosing to stay connected even when it's difficult or inconvenient. Your relationship with God works the same way. Some mornings your prayers will feel like they're soaring straight to heaven. Other mornings they might feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling. Some days you'll sense God's presence so strongly it takes your breath away. Other days you'll have to pray by faith alone, trusting that He's there even when you can't feel Him. All of this is normal. All of this is part of the beautiful, messy, real journey of walking with God. What matters is not the intensity of your spiritual experiences, but the consistency of your choice to seek Him first. What matters is developing the muscle memory of turning to God before you turn to anything else. And here's a secret that will revolutionize your morning prayer times. God isn't as concerned with the length of your prayers as He is with the sincerity of your heart. You don't need to spend hours in prayer to have a meaningful encounter with God. Sometimes the most powerful prayers are the shortest ones. Sometimes a simple, "God, I need you today," carries more weight than an eloquent 30-minute petition. I've known people who set aside just 5 minutes each morning to consciously turn to God first, and those 5 minutes transformed their entire lives. I've also known people who spent an hour in prayer each morning but approached it as a religious duty rather than a relationship, and they remained unchanged, frustrated, spiritually dry. The difference isn't time. The difference is heart posture. The difference is coming to God with authentic need and genuine openness rather than religious obligation. The difference is remembering that you're not performing for an audience, but connecting with a Father who loves you beyond measure. So as we prepare to actually enter into prayer together, I want to give you permission to let go of any preconceived notions about what this should look like or feel like. I want you to release any pressure to pray in a certain way or use particular words. I want you to abandon any worry about whether you're spiritual enough or faithful enough or worthy enough to approach the throne of grace. You are here because God called you here. You are listening to these words because His Spirit drew you to this moment. You are about to pray because He has been preparing your heart for this conversation. This isn't about your worthiness. This is about His invitation. This isn't about your perfection. This is about His grace. This isn't about your strength. This is about His love. Right now, wherever you are, whatever position you're in, I want you to take a moment to simply acknowledge God's presence. You don't have to close your eyes if that's not comfortable for you. You don't have to fold your hands or assume any particular posture. Just recognize that the Creator of the universe, the God who spoke the stars into existence, the one who knows every hair on your head and every thought in your mind, is here with you right now. He's not checking his watch, wondering when you'll finally get around to acknowledging Him. He's not tapping his foot impatiently, waiting for you to say the right words. He's not keeping a record of how many days it's been since you last truly turned to Him first. He's here because He wants to be here. He's present because He chooses to be present. He's listening because He delights to hear from you. This moment right now is holy ground. This conversation you're about to have with God is sacred, not because of anything you bring to it, but because of who He is and what He brings to it. He brings His infinite love, His perfect understanding, His unlimited power, His boundless grace. He brings solutions you haven't thought of, peace that surpasses understanding, strength for whatever you'll face today. And in this sacred moment, as we stand on the threshold of genuine prayer, I want you to understand something that will forever change how you approach not just your mornings, but your entire relationship with God. You see, when we turn to God first, we're not just engaging in a spiritual transaction. We're not simply making a withdrawal from some cosmic bank account or presenting Him with a list of demands and expectations. What we're actually doing is stepping into the most profound mystery of human existence. We're acknowledging that we were created for communion with the divine. We're recognizing that our hearts have a God-shaped void that nothing else in this world can fill. We're admitting that all our striving, all our achieving, all our accumulating of possessions and experiences and relationships, while good and necessary, can never satisfy the deepest longing of our souls. This longing isn't a weakness. It's not a flaw in our design. It's the most beautiful thing about being human. It's what separates us from every other creature on this planet. We were made for more than just surviving or even thriving in this physical realm. We were created for eternal relationship with our Creator, and every morning when we turn to God first, we're saying yes to that relationship. But let me tell you something that might surprise you. When you truly begin to understand this truth, when you really grasp what's happening in these moments of morning prayer, it will ruin you for superficial living. It will spoil you for shallow relationships. It will make you dissatisfied with anything less than authentic connection, not just with God, but with the people He's placed in your life. You see, once you taste the reality of being fully known and completely loved by the God of the universe, everything else pales in comparison. Once you experience what it means to bring your authentic self, your real struggles, your genuine hopes and fears to the one who created you, who understands you better than you understand yourself, who loves you not in spite of your flaws, but with full knowledge of them, then pretending becomes impossible. This is why turning to God first is both the most comforting and the most challenging thing you can do. It's comforting because you're finally coming home to the relationship you were designed for, but it's challenging because it demands honesty in a world that rewards pretense. It requires vulnerability in a culture that celebrates self-sufficiency. It calls for surrender in a society that worships control. And here's where many people get stuck. They want the comfort of God's presence, but they're not ready for the transformation that inevitably comes with genuine relationship with Him. They want His peace, but they don't want to surrender their worry. They want His provision, but they don't want to acknowledge their dependence. They want His blessing, but they don't want His lordship. But you can't have one without the other. You can't experience the fullness of God's love while keeping Him at arm's length. You can't taste the depths of His grace while maintaining the facade that you have everything under control. You can't know the security of His protection while refusing to admit your need for protection. This is why the morning matters so much. This is why these first moments of the day are so crucial. In the quiet of the morning, before the world starts demanding that we put on our masks and play our roles, before we get caught up in the performance of daily life, there's an opportunity for radical honesty. There's a chance to drop the pretense and simply be who we really are before the one who sees us clearly anyway. I want to share with you a truth that has taken me years to fully understand. God is not interested in the person you think you should be. He's not waiting for you to become someone else before he can love you or use you or bless you. He's interested in the person you actually are right now, in this moment, with all your contradictions and complications and questions. Think about that for a moment. The God who created billions of galaxies, who set the laws of physics in motion, who designed the intricate complexity of a single human cell, is captivated by you. Not the improved version of you that you're working toward, not the perfect version of you that exists only in your imagination. You exactly as you are, sitting here right now carrying whatever burdens you're carrying, wrestling with whatever doubts you're wrestling with, hoping whatever hopes you're hoping. This is almost too wonderful to believe, isn't it? And yet, this is the foundation of everything we're talking about. This is why turning to God first isn't just a nice spiritual practice. This is why it's not just another item to add to your self-improvement checklist. This is the recognition of a love so profound, so unconditional, so transformative, that it changes everything about how we see ourselves, how we see others, how we see life itself. But I need to warn you about something. Once you begin to truly experience this kind of love, once you start to understand what it means to be fully known and completely accepted by God, it will create in you a hunger for authenticity that will affect every area of your life. You'll find it harder to tolerate shallow conversations. You'll become impatient with relationships that never go below the surface. You'll start longing for the kind of depth and honesty in your human relationships that you're experiencing with God. This isn't a bad thing, but it can be uncomfortable. It might mean some relationships in your life will need to deepen, or they'll naturally fade away. It might mean you'll need to start being more honest about who you are and what you're struggling with. It might mean letting people see the real you instead of the carefully curated version you've been presenting to the world. And here's something else that happens when you make turning to God first a consistent practice. You begin to see patterns in your life that you never noticed before. You start to recognize the ways that God has been working behind the scenes, orchestrating circumstances, opening doors, closing others, protecting you from dangers you didn't even know existed. You'll look back on difficult seasons and see how they prepared you for opportunities that came later. You'll notice how certain relationships were brought into your life at exactly the right time. You'll recognize answered prayers that you had forgotten you even prayed. You'll become aware of 1,000 small miracles that you missed when you were too busy trying to manage your life without God's input. This awareness doesn't happen overnight. It's something that develops gradually as you consistently choose to begin your days in God's presence. It's like developing your spiritual eyesight, learning to see the invisible hand of God at work in the ordinary moments of your life. And once you start seeing, you can't unsee. Once you begin to recognize God's faithfulness in your past, it becomes easier to trust Him with your future. Once you notice His provision in small things, you can believe Him for bigger things. Once you experience His comfort in minor disappointments, you know He'll be there in major crises. This is what I mean when I say that turning to God first transforms everything. It's not just about having better mornings, though you will. It's not just about feeling more peaceful, though you will. It's not just about making better decisions, though you will. It's about developing a completely different relationship with life itself. Instead of approaching each day from a place of anxiety about what might go wrong, you'll begin to approach it from a place of curiosity about what God might do. Instead of trying to control outcomes, you'll learn to influence what you can and surrender what you can't. Instead of carrying the weight of responsibility for things beyond your control, you'll discover the freedom that comes from doing your part and trusting God with the results. But let me address something that might be stirring in your heart right now. You might be thinking, this sounds beautiful, but what about when life really falls apart? What about when prayers don't seem to be answered? What about when God feels silent and distant? What about when turning to Him first doesn't seem to make any difference in the practical realities I'm facing? These are honest questions, and they deserve honest answers. Yes, there will be seasons when God seems quiet. Yes, there will be times when prayers don't seem to be answered the way you hoped. Yes, there will be periods when turning to God first feels more like discipline than delight. This is all part of the journey, and it doesn't mean you're doing something wrong or that God has abandoned you. In fact, it's often in these difficult seasons that our relationship with God deepens the most. It's when we can't feel His presence that we learn to walk by faith. It's when prayers don't seem to be answered that we discover the difference between getting what we want and getting what we need. It's when life doesn't make sense that we learn to trust God's character, even when we can't understand His ways. Think about the people in your life who you trust the most. Did that trust develop during the easy times when everything was going smoothly? Or did it develop during the difficult times when they proved their faithfulness, when they stood by you even when it was costly, when they loved you through your worst moments? The same is true in your relationship with God. The deepest trust, the most unshakable faith, the most profound peace doesn't come from a life free of problems. It comes from discovering God's faithfulness in the midst of problems. It comes from experiencing His presence in the valley, as well as on the mountaintop. It comes from finding His peace in the storm, not just in the calm. This is why turning to God first is so important, especially during difficult seasons. Not because it guarantees easy answers or quick fixes, but because it keeps us connected to the source of strength we need to endure. It reminds us that we're not facing our challenges alone. It anchors us to the truth of God's character when our circumstances are telling us a different story. And here's something beautiful about God's character that I want you to hold on to. He is not intimidated by your questions. He's not threatened by your doubts. He's not offended by your anger or your confusion or your fear. He can handle your honesty. In fact, He prefers it to religious pretense. The Psalms are filled with people crying out to God in raw, unfiltered emotion. David, who was called a man after God's own heart, regularly poured out his complaints, his fears, his anger, his confusion to God. Job questioned God's justice. Jeremiah accused God of deceiving him. Habakkuk demanded answers about God's apparent inaction in the face of evil. And God didn't strike any of them down for their honesty. Instead, He met them in their pain, He answered their questions, He revealed more of Himself to them. This is the God we're turning to each morning. Not a fragile deity who needs to be protected from our real thoughts and feelings, but a strong, secure, loving Father who can handle whatever we bring to Him. So when you turn to God first, don't feel like you need to clean up your emotions before you approach Him. Don't think you need to figure out how to pray properly or what words to use. Just come as you are with whatever is really going on in your heart and mind. Bring your gratitude and your complaints, your faith and your doubts, your hopes and your fears. This is what authentic relationship looks like. This is what it means to turn to God first, not as a religious exercise, but as a real conversation with someone who loves you more than you can imagine and knows you better than you know yourself. And as we prepare to actually enter into this conversation together, I want you to know that whatever you're bringing to this moment is welcome. Whatever burden you've been carrying, whatever question you've been wrestling with, whatever hope you've been nurturing, whatever fear you've been fighting, it's all welcome here. God sees it all anyway, and He's inviting you to share it with Him. This isn't about performance. This isn't about saying the right things or feeling the right emotions. This is about connection. This is about relationship. This is about coming home to the love you were created for, the acceptance you've been searching for, the peace that can only come from being fully known and completely loved by the God who made you. Take a moment right now to simply breathe. Feel the air filling your lungs, a gift from the God who gave you life. Feel your heart beating, sustained by the one who holds all things together. Feel yourself held, supported, surrounded by love that never wavers, grace that never runs out, mercy that is new every morning. You are not alone. You have never been alone, even in your darkest moments, even in your most confused seasons, even when you felt abandoned or forgotten. You have been held by love that surpasses understanding. And right now, in this moment, that love is inviting you into conversation, into relationship, into the most important connection you will ever experience. This is what it means to turn to God first. This is why it matters so much. This is the foundation upon which everything else in your life can be built. Not because it makes life easy, but because it makes life meaningful. Not because it eliminates problems, but because it provides the strength and wisdom and peace you need to face whatever comes. So let's step fully into this sacred space now. Let's enter into the conversation that your soul has been longing for. the connection that your heart has been seeking, the relationship that will transform not just your mornings, but your entire existence. Let's discover together what it truly means to turn to God first and allow Him to turn everything else right side up. The enemy wants to convince you that this moment isn't real, that this conversation with God is just wishful thinking or religious fantasy. He wants you to believe that your problems are too big for prayer, that your heart is too broken for healing, that your situation is too complicated for divine intervention. But I'm here to tell you that the opposite is true. The more desperate your situation, the more perfect the opportunity for God to demonstrate His power. The more broken your heart, the more room there is for His healing love to flow in. You see, God doesn't just work in spite of your circumstances, He works through them. He doesn't just overcome your obstacles, He uses them as stepping stones to something greater than you could have imagined. He doesn't just heal your wounds, He transforms them into sources of strength and compassion that will bless others who are walking similar paths. But here's what you need to understand about this transformation process. It doesn't happen because you've figured everything out. It doesn't occur because you've finally gotten your act together, or because you've learned to pray with perfect faith. It happens because you've learned to show up consistently, even when you don't feel like it, even when prayer seems pointless, even when God seems silent. There's a woman I know named Maria, whose story illustrates this beautifully. For months, Maria had been fighting a battle with depression that seemed to get worse every day. She would wake up each morning feeling like she was drowning in darkness, unable to see any hope on the horizon. Her prayers felt empty, her faith felt shaken, and she began to wonder if God had forgotten about her entirely. But something inside her, some small voice that she later recognized as the Holy Spirit, kept whispering the same message. Just show up. Just turn to me first. Even if you don't feel anything, even if it seems pointless, just show up. So that's what Maria did. Every morning, despite the crushing weight of depression, despite the voice in her head telling her it was useless, she would sit on the edge of her bed and say, God, I don't feel you, but I'm choosing to believe you're here. I don't understand what's happening to me, but I'm choosing to trust that you have a plan. For weeks, nothing seemed to change. The darkness remained as thick as ever. The despair felt just as overwhelming. But Maria kept showing up, kept turning to God first, kept choosing faith over feelings. And then one morning something shifted. Not dramatically, not with fireworks or angels singing, but quietly, gently. She noticed a small spark of hope that hadn't been there the day before. A tiny voice of truth that spoke louder than the voice of despair. That spark grew into a flame, and that flame grew into a fire of faith that not only pulled Maria out of her depression, but equipped her to help others who were walking through their own dark valleys. Today, Maria leads a ministry for people struggling with mental health issues, and she tells everyone who will listen that the turning point wasn't when she felt God's presence. It was when she chose to turn to Him first, even in the absence of feeling. This is what I want you to understand about turning to God first. It's not dependent on your emotional state. It's not contingent on your circumstances. It's not conditional upon your ability to sense His presence. It's a choice, a decision, a deliberate act of the will that says, regardless of how I feel, regardless of what I'm facing, regardless of whether I can see evidence of God's work in my life, I choose to acknowledge Him first. And here's the miraculous thing about this choice. The more you make it, the more natural it becomes. The more you turn to God first, the more you begin to see His fingerprints on every aspect of your life. The more you practice His presence, the more aware you become of His constant nearness. The more you surrender your burdens to Him, the lighter your load becomes, not because the problems disappear, but because you're no longer carrying them alone. But let me tell you about another aspect of turning to God first that most people never consider. When you begin your day in conversation with the Creator of the universe, you're not just receiving from Him, you're also bringing Him joy. Think about that for a moment. Your prayers, your honest sharing of your heart, your willingness to include Him in your daily life, brings pleasure to the God who spoke galaxies into existence. Scripture tells us that God rejoices over us with singing, that He delights in His children, that He takes pleasure in our fellowship with Him. Your morning prayers aren't just beneficial for you, they're a gift you give to God. Your choice to turn to Him first isn't just about what you can get from Him, it's about the relationship He's been longing to have with you. This changes everything about how we approach prayer, doesn't it? Instead of coming to God only when we need something, We come because he desires our company. Instead of viewing prayer as a spiritual discipline we must master, we see it as a conversation he's been eagerly anticipating. Instead of worrying about whether we're praying correctly, we rest in the knowledge that our sincere hearts bring him joy. Now, I want to address something that might be troubling some of you right now. You might be thinking, I've tried to pray consistently before. I've attempted to turn to God first, but I always seem to fall back into old patterns. I start strong, but then life gets busy or difficult, and I find myself going days or even weeks without really connecting with God. What's different about this time? How can I be sure this won't just be another failed attempt at spiritual consistency? These are valid concerns, and I want you to know that your past struggles with consistency don't disqualify you from experiencing breakthrough in this area. In fact, they might be exactly what prepares you to appreciate the grace and mercy that God wants to pour into your morning routine. You see, spiritual growth isn't about perfection. It's about progression. It's not about never failing. It's about getting back up every time you fall. It's not about maintaining an unblemished record of daily prayer. It's about cultivating a heart that increasingly turns toward God as its first instinct, its natural response, its safest refuge. Every time you've tried and failed in the past, you weren't wasting your time. You were learning valuable lessons about your own limitations, about your need for divine help, even in the simple act of prayer, about the difference between religious duty and authentic relationship. All of those experiences were preparing you for this moment, for this fresh start, for this new understanding of what it truly means to turn to God first. And here's something that might revolutionize how you think about spiritual consistency. God isn't keeping score of your prayer streaks. He's not marking down every day you forget to turn to him first. He's not disappointed in your imperfection because he never expected you to be perfect in the first place. What he's looking for is a heart that's turned toward him, even if that turning happens imperfectly, inconsistently, inadequately by your own standards. Think about a child learning to walk. Do parents get angry every time the child stumbles or falls? Of course not. They celebrate every step, no matter how wobbly. They encourage every attempt, no matter how unsuccessful. They're thrilled by the progress, not frustrated by the imperfection. That's how God views your spiritual journey, including your efforts to turn to him first each morning. So as we move forward, I want you to release yourself from the pressure of perfection. I want you to let go of the guilt from past inconsistencies. I want you to embrace the grace that says, you can start fresh today, right now, in this very moment, regardless of how many times you've started and stopped before. But I also want to give you some practical wisdom that can help you succeed in ways you might not have before. The key to consistency in turning to God first isn't willpower. It's not discipline, though that plays a part. It's not even commitment, though that's important too. The key is falling in love with the process itself, discovering the joy that comes from beginning each day in God's presence. When prayer becomes a delight rather than a duty, consistency becomes natural. When you experience the peace that flows from surrendering your day to God, you'll find yourself craving that peace every morning. When you taste the clarity that comes from aligning your thoughts with his thoughts before the world intrudes with its chaos, you'll hunger for that clarity daily. This is why I'm spending so much time helping you understand not just what to do, but why it matters so profoundly. When you truly grasp the significance of turning to God first, when you really comprehend what's available to you in those morning moments of connection, consistency stops being about forcing yourself to pray and starts being about allowing yourself to receive what your soul desperately needs. And here's another truth that will help you maintain this practice over the long haul. Turning to God first isn't just about the mornings. It's about developing a lifestyle of putting God first in every area of your life. It's about making him your first thought when challenges arise, your first refuge when storms hit, your first counselor when decisions need to be made, your first source of comfort when pain strikes. The morning prayer time is like a training ground where you develop the spiritual muscles you'll need throughout the day. It's where you practice the art of surrender, the discipline of trust, the skill of listening for God's voice. As these practices become second nature in your morning routine, they'll begin to overflow into the rest of your life naturally. You'll find yourself pausing to pray before responding to that difficult email. You'll catch yourself asking for God's wisdom before making that important phone call. You'll discover that your first instinct when facing uncertainty is to turn to the one who sees the end from the beginning. This is what it looks like when turning to God first becomes not just a morning practice, but a way of life. But let me share with you one more crucial element that will determine whether this practice transforms your life or becomes just another spiritual exercise you tried for a while. The difference lies in expectation. Are you approaching this with the expectation that God will meet you, or are you just hoping He might? Are you coming with confidence in His desire to connect with you, or are you tentatively testing whether He's really there? God responds to faith, even faith the size of a mustard seed. He honors expectation, even when it's mixed with doubt. He meets seeking hearts, even when they're broken and confused. But He does respond. He does show up. He does meet with those who genuinely seek Him. So as we prepare to actually enter into prayer together, I want you to approach this moment with holy expectation. Expect God to speak to your heart. Expect Him to bring peace to your anxiety. Expect Him to provide clarity for your confusion. Expect Him to strengthen you for whatever lies ahead today. Not because you've earned it or because you deserve it, but because that's who He is and that's what He loves to do for His children. Your expectation doesn't guarantee that everything will go exactly as you hope today. It doesn't promise that all your problems will be solved or all your questions will be answered. But it does position your heart to receive what God wants to give you, to hear what He wants to say to you, to experience the reality of His presence in ways that will sustain you through whatever this day may bring. And now, as we stand on the threshold of this sacred conversation, I want you to understand something that will forever change how you experience prayer. You're not about to perform for God. You're not about to try to impress Him with your spirituality or convince Him of your worthiness. You're about to be yourself, completely and authentically, in the presence of perfect love. Perfect love casts out fear. Perfect love eliminates the need for pretense. Perfect love creates a safe space where you can be real, raw, honest, vulnerable. This is what you're stepping into right now. This is the environment that God creates for every genuine conversation with Him. This is the atmosphere of grace, where transformation happens naturally, effortlessly, beautifully. So take a deep breath and let yourself settle into this truth. You are loved beyond measure. You are accepted completely. You are welcomed warmly into the presence of the One who created you, who knows you, who has been waiting for this moment of connection with you. Nothing you could say or do or think could change His love for you. Nothing in your past disqualifies you from His grace. Nothing in your present circumstances puts you beyond the reach of His mercy. This is where we begin. This is the foundation upon which everything else is built, not with your perfection, but with His love, not with your worthiness, but with His grace, not with your strength, but with His infinite mercy and kindness toward you. Right now, wherever you are, whatever position you're in, I want you to simply acknowledge that you're in the presence of God. He's not far away. He's not waiting for you to become someone else before He'll pay attention to you. He's here now in this moment, as close as your next heartbeat, as present as the breath in your lungs. Feel the sacred nature of this moment settling over you like a warm blanket. This isn't just another morning. This isn't just another day. This is a divine appointment, a holy encounter, a conversation that has the power to change everything about how you experience life. You're not just saying prayers into empty space. You're connecting with the living God who loves you with an everlasting love. And in this sacred moment, I want you to understand something that will revolutionize every morning for the rest of your life. When you turn to God first, you're not just starting your day differently. You're actually participating in the rhythm that heaven itself follows. You're aligning yourself with the heartbeat of eternity, synchronizing your soul with the very pulse of divine love. Think about this with me for a moment. Before you were even born, before the world was formed, before time itself began, God was already planning this conversation. He was already anticipating this moment when you would choose to turn to Him first. Every sunrise He's painted across the sky, every breath He's sustained in your lungs, every beat He's orchestrated in your heart has been leading to moments like this one. But here's what I need you to grasp, and I mean really grasp, deep in your spirit. The God who is waiting to meet with you right now isn't some distant cosmic force that barely notices your existence. He's not some busy executive who might squeeze you into His schedule if you're lucky. He's not some stern judge who's primarily interested in pointing out your failures and shortcomings. No, the God who is here with you right now is the same God who stops everything He's doing to listen when a sparrow falls. He's the same God who knows the exact number of hairs on your head at this very moment. He's the same God who collects every tear you've ever cried and treasures them like precious jewels. He's the same God who rejoices over you with singing, who delights in you with quiet love, who celebrates you with shouts of joy. Can you imagine that? The creator of the universe, the one who hung the stars in their places and set the planets in their orbits, gets excited about spending time with you. Your willingness to turn to him first doesn't just fill some obligation or satisfy some requirement. It brings him genuine joy. It moves his heart. It matters to him in ways that we can barely comprehend. I want to tell you about David, a man I met several years ago who discovered this truth in the most unexpected way. David was a successful businessman, someone who had built his entire identity around being productive, efficient, always maximizing his time. His mornings were military-precise operations designed to squeeze every possible minute out of the day. He would wake up, immediately check his phone for overnight emails, review his stock portfolio, scan the news, and mentally prepare for the battles he would face in the business world. For years, this routine served him well, at least by worldly standards. His company grew, his bank account expanded, his reputation in the industry flourished, but something was missing, something he couldn't quite identify. Despite all his success, he felt empty, anxious, constantly on edge. He was winning in every measurable way, yet losing something essential that he couldn't even name. One morning, everything changed, not because of some dramatic crisis or life-altering event, but because of a simple moment of recognition. As David reached for his phone to begin his usual routine, he heard his 5-year-old daughter in the next room, talking to her stuffed animals. She was having what she called her morning meeting with her toys, telling them about her plans for the day, asking them how they were feeling, listening carefully as if they were responding. Something about the innocence of that moment, the pure joy his daughter found in that simple connection, stopped David in his tracks. And in that pause, he heard something he hadn't heard in years, a gentle whisper in his heart that said, "What if you talked to me first? What if you started your morning meeting with me?" That morning, for the first time in decades, David set his phone aside and began to pray. Not with eloquent words or sophisticated theology, but with the same childlike simplicity his daughter had shown with her stuffed animals. "God, I don't really know how to do this anymore. I've been so busy managing my life that I forgot you were even there. But I'm here now and I'm listening." What happened next transformed not just David's morning, but his entire existence. He began to experience a peace he hadn't felt since childhood. He discovered a source of wisdom that was deeper than any business strategy he'd ever learned. He found a strength that sustained him through challenges that would have previously overwhelmed him. Most importantly, he rediscovered the joy of relationship, not just with God, but with his family, his friends, even his business associates. David told me later that learning to turn to God first didn't just change his mornings. It changed everything about how he approached life. Instead of waking up in a state of anxious preparation for battle, he began each day with peaceful confidence in divine partnership. Instead of facing challenges alone, he learned to invite God into every decision, every conversation, every opportunity. This is what I want you to understand about what we're doing here together. We're not just adding a spiritual element to your morning routine. We're discovering what it means to live in conscious partnership with the Creator of the universe. We're learning how to tap into a source of wisdom, strength, peace, and joy that the world can't give and circumstances can't take away. But I need to be honest with you about something. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's not a magic formula that instantly makes everything perfect. The journey of learning to turn to God first is exactly that, a journey. There will be mornings when prayer flows like a river, when God's presence feels as real as the air you breathe, when His voice rings clear in your heart. There will also be mornings when prayer feels like pushing through mud, when heaven seems silent, when you question whether any of this makes a difference at all. Both experiences are normal. Both are part of the process. Both are opportunities for growth. The mornings when prayer comes easily teach you the joy of communion with God. The mornings when it feels difficult teach you the faithfulness required for genuine relationship. Neither is more valuable than the other. Both are necessary for developing the kind of deep, authentic connection with God that can sustain you through every season of life. And here's something beautiful about God's character that I want you to hold close to your heart. He meets you wherever you are. On the mornings when you wake up grateful and excited about life, He celebrates with you. On the mornings when you wake up discouraged and overwhelmed, He comforts you. On the mornings when you wake up confused and uncertain, He guides you. On the mornings when you wake up angry and frustrated, He listens to you. There's no emotional state that disqualifies you from God's presence. There's no mood that makes you unwelcome in His throne room. There's no circumstance that puts you beyond the reach of His love. Whatever you're feeling right now, whatever you've been carrying, whatever has been weighing on your heart, it's all welcome here. God can handle your joy just as easily as He can handle your despair. He's not intimidated by your strength, and He's not disappointed by your weakness. This understanding revolutionizes how we approach prayer, doesn't it? Instead of waiting until we feel spiritual enough to pray, we pray because we need to feel His presence. Instead of postponing our conversation with God until we have our emotions under control, we bring our chaotic emotions to Him because He's the only one who can bring true order to the storms within us. Let me share with you 3 profound truths that will anchor your soul as you learn to make turning to God first a consistent practice in your life. These aren't just nice ideas or inspirational thoughts. These are spiritual realities that will transform how you experience every morning for the rest of your life. The first truth is this: God is already waiting for you. You don't have to wake Him up. You don't have to get His attention. You don't have to convince Him to care about your life. Before you even open your eyes each morning, He's already there, already present, already ready to meet with you. He's been anticipating this conversation all night long. He's been preparing His heart to pour out His love on you in fresh, new ways. This changes everything about how we think about prayer, doesn't it? We're not trying to reach a distant God. We're acknowledging the present God. We're not attempting to interrupt His busy schedule. We're accepting His standing invitation. We're not begging for His attention. We're receiving the attention He's already giving us. The second truth is this: your authentic heart is His favorite language. You don't need to use religious words or biblical phrases. You don't need to sound like a preacher or quote scripture with perfect accuracy. God isn't impressed by spiritual vocabulary or theological sophistication. He's moved by honest hearts, genuine need, authentic surrender. Whatever you're thinking right now, whatever emotions are swirling in your chest, whatever questions are racing through your mind, that's exactly what God wants to hear. If you're excited, share that excitement. If you're worried, express that worry. If you're grateful, voice that gratitude. If you're angry, admit that anger. If you're confused, acknowledge that confusion. There's no right way to come to God except to come honestly. The third truth is this: every genuine encounter with God leaves you different. You might not feel it immediately. You might not see dramatic changes right away. But something shifts in your spirit every time you truly connect with the living God. Something in your heart aligns a little more closely with His heart. Something in your mind begins to think more like His mind thinks. Something in your will becomes more surrendered to His will. This transformation is gradual, progressive, cumulative. Each morning that you turn to God first, you're making deposits in the bank account of your spiritual development. Each conversation with Him strengthens the relationship. Each moment of surrender deepens your trust. Each experience of His faithfulness increases your faith. And here's something that might surprise you about this transformation process. It doesn't make you more religious. It makes you more real. It doesn't turn you into some kind of spiritual super saint. It helps you become more authentically human. It doesn't separate you from the world around you. It equips you to engage with the world from a place of peace rather than panic, wisdom rather than worry, love rather than fear. People who consistently turn to God first don't become weird or disconnected from reality. They become more grounded, more present, more able to handle whatever life throws at them. They don't escape from their responsibilities. They fulfill their responsibilities with greater effectiveness and less stress. They don't avoid difficult conversations or challenging situations. They approach them with divine wisdom and supernatural peace. This is what I want for you. Not some kind of mystical, otherworldly existence that has no connection to your daily life, but a deeply practical, profoundly transformative relationship with God that makes every aspect of your life richer, deeper, more meaningful, more effective. Now, I want to address something that might be causing you some concern right now. You might be thinking, this all sounds wonderful, but I'm not naturally a morning person. I'm not someone who wakes up ready to have deep, meaningful conversations. I struggle just to function before my first cup of coffee. How can I possibly develop this kind of morning prayer routine? Let me put your mind at ease about something. God doesn't require you to become a different personality type in order to have a relationship with Him. He doesn't need you to transform into some kind of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed morning person who bounces out of bed ready to conquer the world. He made you exactly the way you are, and He loves meeting with you exactly as you are. If you're not naturally chatty in the morning, your prayers don't have to be long or elaborate. Sometimes the most powerful prayers are the simplest ones. God, I need you today. Lord, help me. Father, I'm scared. Jesus, thank you. These simple, honest expressions can carry more spiritual weight than the most eloquent theological dissertations. If you're not naturally emotional or expressive, you don't have to manufacture feelings or force enthusiasm. God values the quiet, steady faith just as much as He values exuberant praise. He honors the simple decision to acknowledge His presence just as much as He honors passionate worship. He responds to the whispered prayer just as readily as He responds to the shouted hallelujah. If you're not naturally organized or disciplined, you don't have to create some elaborate prayer structure or follow someone else's morning routine. Your conversation with God can be as informal and unstructured as you need it to be. You can pray while you're still lying in bed, while you're getting dressed, while you're making coffee, while you're driving to work. The location doesn't matter. The posture doesn't matter. The time of day doesn't matter nearly as much as the posture of your heart. What matters is the simple decision to include God in your morning, to acknowledge His presence before you acknowledge anything else, to invite His perspective into your day before you get caught up in your own perspective. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. This is about bringing who you are into relationship with the God who created you and loves you exactly as you are. And here's something beautiful about God's flexibility and grace. He meets you at your level of ability and availability. If you can only spare 5 minutes, He'll make those 5 minutes count. If you can only manage a few simple sentences, He'll treasure those sentences like precious gems. If you can only offer Him your confusion and questions, He'll receive them as valuable gifts. The goal isn't to impress God with your spiritual maturity or your prayer prowess. The goal is connection. The goal is relationship. The goal is starting your day with the conscious recognition that you're not walking through life alone, that there's someone who cares about every detail of your existence, someone who has wisdom for your decisions, strength for your challenges, peace for your anxiety, hope for your discouragement. But I want to challenge you to think about this from a slightly different angle. What if the issue isn't that you're not naturally suited for morning prayer? What if the real issue is that you've never experienced the kind of prayer that actually connects you with the living God? What if your previous attempts at morning devotions felt dry or forced or meaningless because they were more about religious obligation than authentic relationship? See, there's a world of difference between saying prayers and actually praying. There's a vast chasm between going through religious motions and having genuine spiritual conversation. There's a profound distinction between performing for God and communing with God. Maybe the reason morning prayer has felt difficult or unnatural in the past isn't because you're not cut out for it. Maybe it's because you've been approaching it as a spiritual discipline to master rather than a relationship to enjoy. Maybe it's because you've been focused on doing it right instead of simply being real. This morning, I want to invite you to try something completely different. Instead of trying to pray the way you think you should pray, just talk to God the way you would talk to the most understanding, most loving, most trustworthy person you've ever known. Instead of using words you think sound spiritual, use words that actually express what's in your heart. Instead of following someone else's prayer formula, simply share what's really going on in your life. God isn't looking for perfect prayers. He's looking for authentic hearts. He's not impressed by religious language. He's moved by real relationship. He's not interested in your spiritual performance. He's interested in your genuine person. And when you approach prayer this way, when you come to God as yourself rather than as who you think you should be, something magical happens. Prayer stops being work and starts being rest. It stops being obligation and starts being opportunity. It stops being something you have to do and starts being something you get to do. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of dreading your morning prayer time, you begin to look forward to it. Instead of rushing through it to get it over with, you find yourself wanting to linger in God's presence. Instead of feeling like you're talking to the ceiling, you begin to sense that someone is actually listening, actually caring, actually responding. Now, as we prepare to actually enter into prayer together, I want you to release any pressure you might be feeling about this moment. I want you to let go of any expectations about what should happen or how you should feel. I want you to abandon any worry about whether you're going to do this correctly. There's no wrong way to have an authentic conversation with God. There's no incorrect way to bring your real heart to the one who created you. There's no improper way to acknowledge your need for divine help and guidance. What we're about to do isn't about following a script or performing a ritual. It's about opening your heart to the God who already knows everything about you and loves you completely anyway. It's about inviting His presence into your awareness and allowing His love to surround you like the air you breathe. So right now, wherever you are, whatever position you're in, I want you to simply acknowledge that God is here, not somewhere far away in heaven, waiting for you to reach Him through your prayers. Here with you in this moment, as close as your heartbeat, as present as your breath. He sees you, He knows you, He loves you. He's been waiting for this conversation, anticipating this connection, preparing to pour out His heart to you, just as much as He's ready to receive your heart from you. This is holy ground, this moment where human need meets divine love, where earthly concerns encounter heavenly perspective, where mortal hearts connect with eternal grace. You're not just about to say some prayers, you're about to participate in the most important conversation of your day, possibly of your entire life. Feel the sacredness of this moment settling over you. Sense the love that surrounds you. Recognize the grace that has brought you to this place of connection with the living God. This isn't just another morning. This isn't just another day. This is a divine appointment, a holy encounter, a conversation that has the power to transform everything about how you experience life. Take a deep breath and prepare to discover what it truly means to turn to God first, not as a religious exercise, but as the most natural, most necessary, most life-giving thing you could possibly do with the gift of this new day. The weight you've been carrying, those burdens that feel too heavy for your shoulders, those worries that steal your sleep and cloud your thoughts, they were never meant to be yours alone. Right now, in this sacred moment, you have the opportunity to transfer that weight to shoulders that are infinitely stronger than yours, to hands that are perfectly capable of carrying what you cannot. But I need you to understand something crucial about this transfer. It's not a one-time transaction where you dump everything on God and walk away expecting Him to handle it all while you remain passive. No, this is the beginning of a partnership, a collaboration between your willing heart and His unlimited power. You do your part, and He does His part. You take the steps you can take, and He handles what's beyond your ability to control. Think about a child learning to ride a bicycle with their father running alongside them. The child has to pedal, has to steer, has to maintain balance. But the father's strong hand is there, steadying them when they wobble, catching them when they fall, providing the support they need until they can ride on their own. That's the picture of what happens when we turn to God first. We're not sitting back doing nothing. We're actively participating in life, but with divine support, guidance, and protection. There's something profoundly liberating about this understanding. You're not responsible for controlling outcomes you have no power to control. You're not expected to have all the answers to questions that are beyond human understanding. You're not required to carry burdens that were designed to be shared with your Creator. But here's where many people miss the beauty of this arrangement. They think surrendering to God means becoming weak or passive or irresponsible. They worry that turning to God first somehow diminishes their own strength or capability. Nothing could be further from the truth. When you align your efforts with God's power, you don't become weaker. You become infinitely stronger. When you sync your wisdom with His wisdom, you don't become less intelligent, you become supernaturally wise. Let me share with you a story that illustrates this principle perfectly. There was a woman named Rachel who owned a small business that was struggling to survive in a competitive market. For months, she had been working 18-hour days, trying to figure out marketing strategies, manage cash flow, keep employees motivated, and maintain quality standards all by herself. She was exhausted, overwhelmed, and on the verge of giving up. One morning, as she sat in her office before dawn, surrounded by spreadsheets and business plans that weren't working, she finally reached the end of herself. She put her head in her hands and whispered, "God, I can't do this anymore. I've tried everything I know how to try. If this business is going to survive, you're going to have to show me what I can't see." That prayer changed everything, but not in the way Rachel expected. God didn't suddenly make her business problems disappear. He didn't magically fill her bank account or send a flood of new customers to her door. Instead, He began to give her wisdom she didn't possess, insights she couldn't have discovered on her own, connections she never could have made through her own networking. Over the following months, as Rachel made it her practice to turn to God first each morning, seeking His guidance before making any major decisions, her business began to transform. Not through her own brilliance or effort alone, but through a supernatural partnership between her willingness to work and His ability to open doors, create opportunities, and provide solutions she never could have imagined. Today, Rachel's business is thriving. But more importantly, she's thriving. She works hard, but she's no longer working in anxious desperation. She faces challenges, but she faces them with divine wisdom and supernatural peace. She makes difficult decisions, but she makes them with access to perspective that goes beyond her own limited understanding. This is what I want you to grasp about turning to God first. It's not about becoming dependent in an unhealthy way. It's about discovering what healthy dependence looks like. It's about learning to draw from a source of strength, wisdom, peace, and provision that never runs dry, never fails, never disappoints. But let me address something that might be stirring in your heart right now. You might be thinking, I've tried to trust God before, and it didn't work out the way I hoped. I've prayed for things that didn't happen. I've asked for help that didn't come. I've believed for changes that never materialized. How can I be sure this time will be different? These are honest questions, and they deserve honest answers. The truth is, turning to God first doesn't guarantee that everything will go exactly according to your plans or your timeline. It doesn't promise that every prayer will be answered the way you want it to be answered. It doesn't ensure that life will suddenly become easy or that problems will magically disappear. What it does guarantee is that you'll never face anything alone. What it promises is that you'll have access to wisdom, strength, peace, and perspective that you could never generate on your own. What it ensures is that even when things don't go according to your plan, you'll have the confidence that they're still going according to God's plan, which is ultimately better than anything you could have devised. You see, there's a difference between getting what you want and getting what you need. There's a distinction between having your prayers answered the way you hoped and having them answered in the way that's ultimately best for you. God's love for you is too great to give you everything you ask for. His wisdom is too perfect to always say yes to your requests. His plans for your life are too wonderful to be limited by your current understanding of what would be good for you. Sometimes, the greatest gift God can give you is a no to what you think you want, so He can give you a yes to something far better than you could have imagined. Sometimes the most loving thing He can do is allow you to wait for His timing instead of rushing ahead with your own timing. Sometimes the wisest response to your prayers is to give you strength to endure rather than removing the challenge altogether. This doesn't mean God doesn't care about your desires or your timeline or your preferences. It means He loves you too much to limit His response to your limited perspective. He sees the end from the beginning. He knows what's coming around corners you can't see. He understands how all the pieces of your life fit together in ways that would blow your mind if you could see the full picture. When you turn to God first, you're not just asking Him to bless your plans. You're asking Him to align your plans with His plans. You're not just seeking His help to accomplish your goals. You're opening yourself to discover His goals for your life, which are infinitely better than anything you could have dreamed up on your own. But here's what I need you to understand about God's plans for your life. They're not designed to make you miserable or to deny you joy or fulfillment. God's plans for you are plans for good, not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. His desires for your life include joy, peace, purpose, meaningful relationships, and deep satisfaction. He's not a cosmic killjoy who delights in disappointing His children. He's a loving Father who takes pleasure in giving good gifts to those He loves. The question isn't whether God wants good things for you. The question is whether you trust His definition of good more than your own. The issue isn't whether He desires to bless you. The issue is whether you're willing to be blessed in ways that might be different from what you expected. And here's something beautiful about God's character that will revolutionize how you think about prayer and surrender. He doesn't just want to give you things. He wants to give you Himself. He doesn't just want to solve your problems. He wants to be your peace in the midst of problems. He doesn't just want to answer your questions. He wants to be your wisdom when answers are hard to find. The ultimate goal of turning to God first isn't to get stuff from Him, though He loves to provide for His children. It's to get more of Him, to experience deeper levels of His presence, to know Him more intimately, to be transformed more completely into His likeness. And in the process of receiving more of Him, You discover that He is everything you've been searching for in all those other places. When God becomes your first source of security, you stop being anxious about financial provision because you know the one who owns everything. When God becomes your first source of wisdom, you stop being paralyzed by difficult decisions because you have access to perfect understanding. When God becomes your first source of love, you stop being desperate for human approval because you're secure in divine acceptance. This is the transformation that happens when you consistently turn to God first. You don't lose your humanity. You discover what it means to be fully human, to live as you were designed to live in conscious partnership with your Creator. You don't become irrelevant to the world around you. You become more effective, more impactful, more able to be a blessing to others because you're drawing from an unlimited source. Now, I want to share with you something that will completely change how you experience the challenges and setbacks that are inevitably part of life. When you make turning to God first a consistent practice, difficulties stop being just problems to solve and start being opportunities to experience God's faithfulness in new ways. Setbacks stop being just disappointments to endure and start being setups for comebacks that only God could orchestrate. Every challenge becomes a chance to see God's power at work. Every uncertainty becomes an opportunity to trust His guidance. Every moment of weakness becomes a platform for His strength to be displayed. Every season of waiting becomes a classroom where you learn deeper levels of faith, patience, and dependence on Him. This doesn't mean you enjoy problems or go looking for difficulties. It means you approach them differently when they come. Instead of being devastated by unexpected challenges, you become curious about how God is going to work through them. Instead of being overwhelmed by circumstances beyond your control, you become expectant about what God is going to do with those circumstances. I think about a man named James, who lost his job unexpectedly after 15 years with the same company. For the first few days he was devastated, angry, fearful about the future. But James had been practicing the discipline of turning to God first for several years, so even in his shock and disappointment, his instinct was to bring his situation to God before he did anything else. That morning, prayer time became a lifeline for James during the months of unemployment that followed. Instead of spending his days in anxious job searching and bitter rumination about how he'd been treated, he found himself starting each morning by surrendering his situation to God, asking for wisdom about next steps, and trusting that this setback was somehow part of a larger plan he couldn't see yet. The job that James eventually found wasn't just better than the one he'd lost. It was in a completely different field, using gifts and abilities he didn't even know he had. It provided better compensation, better work-life balance, and most importantly, a sense of purpose and fulfillment he'd never experienced in his previous career. What looked like a devastating setback turned out to be God's way of moving him into something far better than he could have arranged for himself. But here's the most beautiful part of James's story. The transformation wasn't just about getting a better job. It was about discovering a level of trust in God that he'd never experienced before. Going through that difficult season while maintaining his practice of turning to God first taught him lessons about faith, patience, and divine faithfulness that have served him in every area of life since then. This is what I want you to understand about the journey you're embarking on when you choose to turn to God first. It's in God's goodness and faithfulness that not just about having better mornings, though you will. It's not just about feelings about developing an unshakable confidence, just about making better decisions, though you will. It more peaceful, though you will. It's not will carry you through every season of life with grace, wisdom, and supernatural peace. But let me be clear about something. This confidence doesn't develop overnight. This trust isn't built in a single conversation with God. This peace isn't achieved in one morning of prayer. Like any relationship, your connection with God deepens over time, through consistency, through shared experiences, through waiting morning that you turn to God first is an investment small and large ways, every essing His faithfulness in both in this relationship. Every prayer is a deposit in the bank account of trust. Every experience of His faithfulness becomes evidence you can draw upon when faith is tested. Every answered prayer becomes a testimony you can remember when prayers seem to go unanswered. This is why the daily practice matters so much. It's not just about individual moments of connection with God, though those are precious and important. It's about building a history with Him, accumulating evidence of His character, developing spiritual muscles that can support you when life gets heavy. And here's something that will encourage you as you begin or restart this journey. God honors every sincere attempt to seek Him, even the imperfect ones. He treasures every authentic prayer, even the clumsy ones. He responds to every genuine cry for help, even when you don't have the right words to express what you need. You don't have to wait until you've figured out how to pray perfectly. You don't have to postpone turning to God until you've gotten your spiritual act together. You don't have to delay this practice until you feel more worthy or more faithful or more consistent. Start where you are, with what you have, in whatever condition you find yourself. God meets you at your point of need, not at your point of perfection. He encounters you in your weakness, not in your strength. He connects with you in your confusion, not in your clarity. He loves you in your mess, not after you've cleaned up your mess. This is the God who is waiting to meet with you right now, in this moment, exactly as you are. This is the Father who has been longing for this conversation, anticipating this connection, preparing to pour out His love and grace and wisdom into your life in ways that will transform everything about how you experience each new day. So as we prepare to finally enter into this sacred conversation, as we get ready to actually practice what it means to turn to God first, I want you to come with expectation, but without pressure, with faith, but without performance, with honesty, but without shame. You're about to discover what your soul has been searching for all along. You're about to experience the peace that comes from knowing you're not facing life alone. You're about to taste the joy of being fully known and completely loved by the one who created you. You're about to step into the relationship that will give meaning and purpose and direction to every other relationship in your life. This is more than just a morning prayer. This is the beginning of a transformed existence, a life lived in conscious partnership with the God who loves you beyond measure and has plans for you that are more wonderful than you could ever imagine. This is your invitation to come home to the love you were created for, the acceptance you've been searching for, the peace that can only be found in the presence of the Almighty. Take a deep breath and prepare to turn to God first, not as a religious obligation, but as the most natural, most necessary, most life-giving choice you could possibly make. Your heart is about to find its true home, and your life is about to discover its true purpose. The most beautiful thing about this moment is that you don't have to have all the answers before you approach the throne of grace. You don't need to understand the mysteries of faith or have your theology perfectly worked out. God isn't looking for spiritual scholars or religious experts. He's looking for hearts that are open, spirits that are hungry, souls that recognize their desperate need for something beyond themselves. Right now, as you sit in this sacred space, I want you to feel the weight of divine attention resting upon you. Not the heavy, crushing weight of judgment or criticism, but the gentle, loving gaze upon His beloved child. You, weight of a father's G, have captured the attention of the Creator of the universe, not because you've done something impressive or accomplished some great feat, but simply because you exist, because you are His, because He delights in you. There's something happening in the spiritual realm right now that your natural eyes cannot see. Angels are leaning in. Heaven is taking notice. The very atmosphere around you is charged with the presence of the living, what occurs every time one of God's children chose God. This isn't just your imagination or wishful thinking. This is the reality of OCs to turn their face toward heaven, to acknowledge their need, to open their heart in genuine surrender. But I want to tell you about something that might surprise you. Something that will revolutionize how you're about to encounter isn't primarily think about this entire experience. The Go, interested in what you can do for Him. He's not sitting there with a clipboard, checking off your performance or grading your spiritual maturity. He's not waiting to see if you'll finally get your act together or prove yourself worthy of His attention. Know the God who is present with you right now is captivated by who you are, not what you do. He's moved. He's drawn to your authentic by your heart, not your achievements, not your ability to sound religious or spiritual. He sees past all the masks you wear, all the roles you play, all the versions of yourself you present to the world, and He loves the real person underneath it all. Think about this with me for a moment. Before you accomplished anything in life, before you learned any skills or developed any talents, any contributions, before you made to society or achieved any measure of success, Go. Hist already loved you completely. Love for you isn't based on your performance. It's based on His nature. He doesn't love you because you're good. Changes everything about how we He loves you because He is good. This understanding approach prayer, doesn't it? We're not coming to earn God's love or to convince Him to care about us. We're coming to receive the love He's already pouring out, to accept the care He's already extending, to open our hearts to the grace He's already offering. We're not performing for His approval. We're resting in His acceptance. I want to share with you a truth that has taken me years to fully grasp, and even now I'm still learning to live in the reality of it. God's love for you is not conditional upon your spiritual consistency. His faithfulness to you doesn't depend on your faithfulness to Him. His commitment to your well-being isn't shaken by your moments of doubt, or your seasons of distance, or your times of rebellion. You see, God's love isn't like human love, which can be fickle, conditional, based on mood or circumstance or performance. God's love is like the sun, constant and unwavering, shining whether you feel it or not, you acknowledge it or not, warming present whether you're aware of it or not. Your spiritual inconsistencies don't turn off God's love any more than closing your eyes turns off the sun. This might be hard for you to believe, especially if you've been taught that God's love must be earned, or that His blessings are contingent upon your behavior. Maybe you've been carrying guilt about prayers you didn't pray, quiet times you missed, promises to God that you didn't keep. Maybe you've been afraid to approach Him because you feel like you've let Him down too many times. Let me speak directly to that fear, that guilt, that sense of unworthiness. God is not keeping a record of your spiritual failures. He's not maintaining a scorecard of your missed opportunities to connect with Him. He's not disappointed in your imperfections, because He never expected you to be perfect in the first place. What He's looking for isn't perfection, it's direction. What He values isn't your flawless performance, it's your willing heart. There's a story in the Bible about a man who came to Jesus and said, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." Think about that for a moment. This man was with doubt, honest enough to admit that his faith was mixed, that his belief was imperfect, that he needed help even to believe properly. And how did Jesus respond? Did He send the man away to work on his faith until it was stronger? Did He lecture him about the inadequacy of his belief? No. Jesus honored his honesty and met his need. This is the God you're approaching right now. Not a demanding taskmaster who requires perfect faith before He'll respond, but a loving Father who honors honest hearts, even when they're conflicted. Not a distant deity who only pays attention to those who have their spiritual lives completely figured out, but a present Savior who specializes in meeting people exactly where they are. So, as we prepare to actually enter into prayer together, I want you to release any pressure you might be feeling to sound spiritual or to pray in a certain way. I want you to let go of any worry about whether your faith is strong enough, or your heart is pure enough, or your motives are right enough. Come as you are, with whatever mixture of faith and doubt you're carrying. God can hope and fear, gratitude and complaint handle your complexity. He's not intimidated by your contradictions. He's not confused by your questions. He's not offended by your struggles. In fact, He's drawn to honest hearts that are willing to admit their confusion, their need, their desperation. He'd rather have your authentic doubt than your pretended certainty. He'd rather have your genuine questions than your fake answers. Now, I want to prepare you for something that might happen as we pray together. You might feel an overwhelming sense of God's presence, a warm embrace, or you might feel very tangible awareness of His love surrounding you, like little emotionally, but sense a quiet peace settling into your spirit. You might find words flowing easily, prayers pouring out of your heart like a river, or you might struggle to find words, something to say. All of these experiences feeling like you're groping in the dark ford. All of them are acceptable to God. The intensity are normal. All of them are valley of your emotions, or the eloquence of your prayers doesn't determine the effectiveness of your connection with Him. What matters is the posture of your heart, the openness of your spirit, the willingness to be real in His presence. Some of the most powerful prayers ever prayed have been the simplest ones. Help me. Thank you. I'm sorry. I need you. These simple, honest expressions can move the heart of God more than the most elaborate religious. It's authenticity. But He's looking for isn't perfectionication, it's sincerity. What speech is, what He's listening for, isn't sophist, here's something I want you to understand about what's going to happen in the next few minutes. This isn't just about you talking to God, though that's certainly part of it. This is also about learning to listen, to sense His presence, to become aware of His voice speaking to your heart. Prayer just about presenting your requests to God. It's about isn't a monologue, It's a dialogue. It's not opening your heart to receive what he wants to give you. God has things he wants to say to you, this raged heart. Wisdom for your confused mind. Peace morning. He has encouragement for your disco you haven't considered. Solutions you haven't your weary soul. He has perspectives for your anxious spirit. Hope for thought of. Possibilities you haven't imagined. But you'll only receive these gifts if you're not just talking but also listening. This listening doesn't. It's more like learning to recognize require some special spiritual skill or mystical ability. More time you spend with someone, the voice of a friend in a crowded room. Thee is true with God. The more you, the more familiar their voice becomes. The same practice his presence, the more sensitive you become to his whispers. The more you turn to him first, the more natural it becomes to hear his gentle guidance throughout your day. Sometimes go. A flash of understanding that illumines voice comes as a sudden insight. It's a situation you've been confused about. Sometimes it comes as a gentle correction, a loving nudge away from a path that would lead to harm. Sometimes it comes as encouragement, a reminder of his love and faithfulness when you're feeling discouraged or forgotten. Sometimes it comes as direction, clarity about a decision you need to make, or here's what I need, a step you need to take. But you, to understand about hearing from God. His voice will never contradict his character as revealed in Scripture. He do something that violates his nature of will, never lead you to love, truth, justice, and mercy. He will never tell to act in ways that are you to harm yourself or others, dishonest or destructive, or learning to recognize to make decisions that are clearly contrary to biblical wisdom. When you God's voice, it helps to remember that his communications are generally characterized by peace rather than panic, love rather than fear, wisdom rather than foolishness, hope rather than despair. If what you sense him saying brings confusion, condemnation, or destruction, it's probably not from him. God's voice brings, rather than destruction. As we enter into this time of prayer, I want you to expect clarity, conviction that leads to life, and construction process of learning to hear him. Like any, I also want you to be patient with the God to speak to your heart, but be discouraged. If his voice doesn't skill, it develops over time through practice. Don't seem clear immediately. Keep showing up. Keep listening. Keep practicing his presence, and gradually you'll become more sensitive to the ways he communicates with you. Now this will anchor your soul and I want to give you 3 simple but powerful truths before we actually begin to pray. First, God is hold on to throughout this experience. These true you confidence as you open your heart to God, already present with you. You don't have to reach him through one who is already there. He's not far your prayers. You're simply acknowledging if your prayers are good enough to get away in some distant heaven, waiting to see his attention. He's here now, as close as your heartbeat, more attentive than your most caring friend, more invested in your well-being than you are yourself. Second, your honest heart is more valuable to God than your perfect words. He's evaluating your theology. He's listening to your heart, and honest, not grading your grammar heart. Speak a language he understands perfectly, regardless of how articulate or inarticulate the words might be. Don't worry about sounding spiritual. Just be real. Third, this encounter will change you even if you don't feel it immediately. Every genuine connection with God leaves an impression on your spirit, shifts something in your heart, aligns something in your soul with his heart. You might not sense the change right away, but transformation is happening at levels deeper in your heart. You're ready to step than your conscious awareness. With these truths and what your spirit has been, create what your heart has been searching for, what your soul has been longing for, fully into this sacred conversation. You're ready to discover for. You're ready to experience what allow him to transform, not just your morning. It truly means to turn to God first but your entire existence. Take one more deep breath and feel yourself settling into this moment of unzu. The grace that embraces you, the peace that is divine encounter. Feel the love that's sorrow beginning to fill the spaces in your heart that have been empty for so long. You're not just about to say some prayers, you're about to come home to the relationship you were created for. The God of the universe is waiting to meet with you, to speak with you, to pour his love into your heart and his wisdom into your mind. He's been anticipating this conversation, preparing to reveal himself to you in ways that will forever change how you experience life. This is your moment, your opportunity, your invitation to step into the most important relationship you will ever have. Everything that has led to this moment, every circumstance that brought you here, Every stirring in your heart that made you willing to turn to God first has been orchestrated by divine love. This is not coincidence. This is providence. This is God's grace drawing you into the very relationship your soul was designed for. Right now, as you prepare to open your heart in prayer, know that you are loved beyond measure, accepted completely, and welcome of the one who created you, and warmly into the presence knows you, and has been waiting for you to come home to him. This conversation is about to begin, and it has the power to transform everything about how you experience every morning for the rest of your life. Now, before we step across the threshold into this life-changing conversation with the Almighty, I need you to understand something that will revolutionize how you approach not just this morning, but every morning that follows. What you're about to experience isn't just another spiritual exercise or religious ritual. This is the moment when your soul finds its true north, when your heart discovers its authentic rhythm, when your life aligns with the divine purpose for which you were created. There's a stirring happening right now in the spiritual realm that transcends what your natural senses can perceive. The very air around you is charged with expectation, thick with the presence of the one who spoke worlds into existence, yet whispers your name with tender affection. Heaven itself is leaning in, angels are taking notice, and the heart of God is moved by your willingness to choose him first, before the chaos of another day claims your attention. But let me tell you something that might shake you to your core. The God you're about to encounter isn't impressed by your religious vocabulary or your theological sophistication. He's not evaluating your spiritual resume or checking off boxes on some heavenly scorecard. What moves his heart, what captures his attention, what causes him to lean in closer, is something far simpler yet infinitely more precious. It's the raw honesty of a heart that admits its need, the humble surrender of a spirit that says vulnerable authenticity of a soul that drops its pret. Think about this with, I can't do this alone anymore, me, for a moment. The same God who carved out the Grand Canyon with a whiz in the velvet of space, who who hung the stars like diamonds rates the dance of galaxies across the cosmos, is captivated by the simple prayer. That's the beginning of true strength. That's not of someone who says, God, I need you today. That's not weakness, that's not defeat. That's the doorway to supernatural failure. That's the foundation of genuine success victory. I want to share with you a truth that has the power to shatter every chain of religious performance and spiritual love you because you pray perfectly. He loves you while you're learning to pray. He doesn't accept anything that has ever bound your heart. God doesn't you because you've mastered the art of morning devotions. He accepts you in the midst. He doesn't draw near because of your struggle to be consistent. You've finally gotten your spiritual act together. He draws near because you're honest about how desperately you need him to story, embodies this truth in the most beautiful way. Margaret, help you get your act together. There's a woman I know who's had been trying to establish a morning prayer routine for years. Every January, she would make resolutions about spending time with God each day. She would buy new devotional books, set multiple alarms, even prepare her as smooth as possible. But inevitably, within coffee the night before to make the morning routine weeks, sometimes within days, life would interve work deadline, a sleepless night that a sick child, an urgent left her too exhausted to function, let alone pray. Each time she failed herself that God was disappointed in her, that herd to maintain consistency, Margaret would spiral into guilt and shame. She convinced inability to pray regularly meant she was a failure as a Christian, that she might as well not even try since she obviously couldn't stick with it anyway. For years, this cycle repeated itself. Morning, everything changed. Margaret woke up in attempt, fail, guilt, give up, repeat. But one the middle of a particularly chaotic season, her husband had been laid off, her own job. Her teenage daughter was struggling with anxiety, was demanding impossible hours, and she felt like she was drowning edge of her bed, overwhelmed by the weight of another in responsibilities. As she sat on the days she didn't feel equipped to handle, she finally stopped trying to pray the way she thought she should pray. Instead, she simply said, God, I'm a mess. I don't know how to do this life thing, and I certainly don't know how to pray the right way. But I need you. I need you in ways I can't even put into words. If you can work with someone who's this scattered and inconsistent and desperate, then I'm here. I'm willing. I'm yours. That morning marked the beginning of a transformation that had everything to do with authentic relationship. Nothing to do with perfect prayer times, and Margaret stopped trying to pray for a certain God in her actual life. She prayed while making amount of time each day, and started including breakfast, seeking wisdom for conversations with her anxious daughter. She prayed while driving to work, surrendering her fears about the family's financial situation. She prayed while doing laundry, asking for strength to love her husband well during his season, understanding of what it means to turn to God first, of unemployment. What Margaret discovered revolutionized hers, not about perfect timing or ideal circumstances or flawless consistency. It's about developing the reflex to include God in your real life, to acknowledge His presence in your actual circumstances, to invite His wisdom into your genuine struggles. Today, Margaret's life is far from perfect. She still faces challenges, still has mornings when prayer feels difficult, still wrestles with inconsistency in her spiritual disciplines. But she's discovered something more valuable than perfect religious performance. She's found authentic relationship with a God who meets her in her mess, who speaks wisdom into her chaos, who provides strength for her weakness. This is what I want you to understand as we prepare to pray together. God isn't looking for your spiritual perfection. He's looking for your authentic presence. He's not waiting for you to figure out how to pray correctly. He's waiting for you to simply show up honestly. He's not interested in your religious performance. He's interested in your real heart. But here's something that might surprise you about God's character, something that will change how you approach every morning for the rest of your life. When you turn to God first, you're not just getting His attention. You already have His attention. You're not earning His love. You already possess His love. You're not convincing Him to care about your life. He's already more invested in your well-being than you could. Does the parent only pay attention to the child? Possibly imagine. Think about a parent with a newborn baby D when the child performs well or communicates perfectly. Of course not. The parent is constantly aware of the child, constantly attentive to their needs, constantly ready to respond to their cries, whether those or seemingly irrational. That his attention through perfect prayers or consistent quiet times cries are articulate or desperate. Reasonable's a pale reflection of how God relates to you. He's not waiting for you to earn. His attention is already fixed on you. His love is the morning. You're not awakening, He's already surrounding you. His care is already active in your life. When you turn to God first in interest in you, you're awakening to be real. Instead of trying to God with the pressure to perform, we come with the freedom transforms everything about how we approach prayer, instead of coming in you. This understanding awareness of His constant interest to impress Him with our spirituality, we re-steers the heart behind every word, understands they're praying correctly. We trust that He hates in the security of His love, instead of worrying about whether we to connect with Him. And here's something need behind every request, sees the love behind every attempt took your struggles. He uses them to draw you closer to Himself through them. He doesn't just tolerate your imperfections. He works to your authentic heart. He's beautiful about God's response. He doesn't just forgive your incons you in the midst of them with fresh instances. He meets, is a victory. Every prayer, no matter how stum of how you feel or how well you think you're doing it, hope. Every morning that you choose to turn to God first, regardless grace, new mercy, and renew ways you can't see or imagine. Now, as space for His presence to work in your life in, however brief or imperfect, creates bling or uncertain, is precious to Him. Every moment of surrender, we stand on the verge of actually entering into this sacred conversation. I want you to understand something that will anchor your soul in God. You're not just talking to someone. When you truly connect with the living your spirit in the seasons of blessing, when you pray the storms of life and lift who has good ideas about how you should live your life, you're connecting with the one who has the power to actually change your circumstances, to make ways where their seams can shut, to close doors that no man can open, to open doors that no man change your circumstances. You're more than His power to be no way, but the grace to change your response, to change your heart, the wisdom to change your perspective, connecting with the one who has the love. God changes what you're going through. Sometimes He changes what's to whatever circumstances you face. Sometimes both are evidence of His goodness. Both are reasons going through you. Both are miracles for gratitude. The prayer you're about to pray isn't just words spoken into empty space. It's communication with the Creator of the universe, who knows every actually begin this conversation. I want you to feel the weight star by name, yet calls you His beloved child. It's conversation with the one who holds tomorrow in His hands, yet this moment. As we prepare Todd from the beginning, yet meets you exactly where you are and walks with you through today's challenges. It's connection with the God who sees the een of this moment settling over you like a holy mantle. Not the crushing weight of religious obligation, but the comforting weight of divine attention. Not the heavy burden of spiritual performance, but the gentle pressure of unconditional love. You are about to step into the most important conversation you will have today, possibly the most significant encounter you will experience this week. But before we speak our first words to God, before we open our hearts in prayer, I want you to simply be still for a moment and recognize that He is already here. He's not coming to meet you. He's already present. He's not preparing you with an intensity that would overwhelm you if you could not getting ready to love you. He's already loving to listen to you. He's already listening. He's fully comprehend it. As you step forward into this new day, remember that you don't walk alone. You carry with you the peace that comes from turning to God first, the strength that flows from divine partnership, and the unshakable confidence that your life is held in hands far stronger than your own. This isn't the end of our conversation. It's the beginning of a transformed way of living. Tomorrow morning, when that first ray of sunlight touches your face, you'll have another opportunity to choose what matters most.